we see the signs of Jesus, you have those who believe, those who come along and say, surely this is the Son. But shortly after that, you have those who have decided to harden, those who have come against Jesus in almost every instance. And so here at the raising of Lazarus from the dead, you have those who say, surely this is the Son, and they become more sure that he is Christ. But at the same time, with the raising of Lazarus from the dead, not only do we have those who say, surely this is the Christ, but we also have those whose hearts are becoming steady, more hardened to the fact that who Jesus is. Now, completely off topic here for just a moment. We saw the very same thing when we were studying the book of Exodus, remember? With each sign that God gave the Egyptians when he was going to bring his people out of their bondage to slavery, and out of slavery to the Egyptians, and out of slavery in their hearts and minds to the sin nature of who they were, they became more aware of who God was, how God was acting on their behalf. And at the same time, remember this is a really good parallel. I mean, because we look at this and say, okay, we're talking about the hardening of people's hearts. We might go back and start having the debate in our minds. Did they have a choice here? Perhaps they did, perhaps they didn't. But we can take this parallel back to Pharaoh in Egypt and say, at the same time, God was declaring himself God to his people when he was preparing them to deliver them out of Egypt. And at the same time, he was declaring himself God to Pharaoh, who had declared war against God. He was in essence saying, you have said that your people are to be free and to multiply and to follow you, but I have made them my slaves, and I have chosen that they are not going to multiply because I'm going to kill the firstborns. I'm going to kill the sons, and so therefore they can't multiply. So Pharaoh had in essence declared war against God. And so while God is giving them the signs, what is he doing? Pharaoh's heart's being hardened, not necessarily on the act of God, but somewhat on the act of God. But reality is going on here that Pharaoh's heart's being hardened because he's choosing to ignore the signs of God. He's choosing to ignore what God is doing. And here, when we come to the signs in the Gospel of John, this is an extremely distinct parallel of what's going on here. Jesus is providing signs of who he is, what he's doing. The followers, those who are seeing and witnessing, they're falling more in love with Jesus. Do we see this from John 1 through 11? The people are falling more in love with Jesus, or else the opposite side of this equation is you're either falling more in love with Jesus or your heart is becoming more hardened to who Jesus is and to who God is, right? And so the interesting thing is that this isn't the first time in biblical history this has happened. This is at minimum the second time that this has happened. And so as a people today, as we're looking at this, and we're going to get to this in 30 minutes, there's two responses that you and I can take to this. The more we see and hear, and the more we read the Bible, and the more we hear the gospel, the more we witness the things of God, the more we see the sun come over the mountain, the more we understand that Jesus is the light of the world, the more we see the sun go down over the monument, the more we witness, again, the light and the presence of who God is. There's one or two responses that we're going to have. We're going to see that Jesus is God. We're going to praise Jesus as God, or our hearts will become more hardened to who God is, and we're going to be people who seek the destruction of the image of the kingdom of heaven. And that's kind of what we see unfolding here in John, and all throughout the first chapter, 11 chapters of John, and even as we get into John chapter 12, is either you're going to take one or two stands here, and even today in 2018, sitting at Book Cliff or anywhere in the world, or in Indonesia this morning, the people took one stand. They're going to worship God, or they're going to attack the people of God. I mean, it's extremely relevant. This is extremely relevant to who we are as a human people, extremely relevant to who we are as people who either love God or hate God. I mean, when we look at this, I guess my whole point of this, which is none of this is in the notes this morning, but my point of this is there's the gospel and the Bible is extremely relevant because what happened in Exodus is reoccurring in the Gospel of John and is reoccurring today in 2018 in the world. It's here. It affects our lives. And how we live out what we study in the Bible matters. How we live out what we understand about God matters.